A desert prison, the Takla Makan. What was Alexander the Great looking for in the Takla Makan desert of China? This is a copy of the weapon, the secret weapon he supposedly received from an extraterrestrial Atlantean he was to meet in the Takla Makan desert of China. He did get this, and this is a copy of what he received, and it's found in one of the Tibetan monasteries of the Himalayas. Now, this is a picture of it in the Tibetan monastery. It was handed over by the generals to the monastery there, by Alexander the Great's generals, 330 BC. So he did get to China. It's not just Pakistan or India. He got to the end of China. His generals even put up a column saying, the King Alexander came all the way to this point. So he lost a third of his warriors there, over 10,000. He had an army of over 30,000 warriors. He lost 10,000 of them in the Takla Makan desert. This name means you go in, but you can never come back out. Now, much has been said about Alexander the Great's campaign as a whole, and more especially of that part of it which took place in Central Asia, more specifically this part that took place in the desert of Takla Makan in China. What was his real goal when he dared to cross one of the hardest deserts on the planet? According to many, the hardest desert on the planet. What was it that led him to overcome all obstacles and defy the most adverse conditions to make this journey? Knowing that he would lose a lot of his warriors, he lost a third of them. One could say it was madness and an attempt to prove his military worth, but he had already done this too many times before. One more time would do him no good. So the question of what led him to this venture remains unanswered, or maybe not. But before we proceed to explore the real purpose of his campaign, let's take a little look about the nature of this particular desert. The Takla Makan Desert is located in China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Province. In the north, it reaches the Tarim River, the foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains, and in the south of Kunlun Mountains. This is a typical example of the cold desert, as it receives very cold air masses from Siberia, which lower the temperature to very low levels. Sometimes they reach below minus 20 degrees Celsius. That's extremely freezing. And because of its location right in the heart of Asia and thousands of kilometers away from any water source, it has very cold nights even in the summer. That is, it is essentially impassable for any person. This is the reality of the desert of Takla Makan, and of course it is particularly harsh. So was it reasonable for such an intelligent soldier to lead his army through such an adverse condition if there was no higher purpose? If he was not ordered from somewhere to carry out such a mission, would he do it? Obviously not. But what could have been the mission that the great soldier might have had and was led to these actions and faced so many dangers? It was a mission set during the campaign where he had been trained from childhood for this purpose. And these are the Nephilim that he found in various countries that he went to. What he didn't do away with, he threw into pits and covered the pits with certain metals and built pyramids over them. Now, what could be his purpose and trained from his childhood for this? Let's remember the archangel Gabriel in the book of Daniel talked to Daniel and prophesied concerning the young man from the north of Greece that would put an end to the Persians. And this was Alexander the Great. Now, the writer says here, I believe, as did many of the congregation, that they were preparing for a holy purpose, for a mission that had its final goal, the salvation of planet Earth, and the restoration of order and orderly functioning on it. The campaign of Alexander the Great in Takla Makan took place around the year 326 BC, when he had completed the conquest of the Persian Empire and was advancing on Central Asia. Ancient writers report that he had a particularly difficult time subduing the wild tribes of the region, and it took him a long time to do so. Perhaps with these reports, they are in fact trying to cover up the fact of the campaign. They were then in the province of Bactria, and following a course parallel to the river Oxus, they reached the borders of the desert. Essentially, it followed the course of the first expeditionary corps of Dionysius of ancient Greece, who had first carried out a similar campaign about 2,000 years before Alexander the Great. So that's about 2,300 BC. That's about almost 4,500 years ago. He passed through the same difficult paths to enter Xinjiang province, which is dominated by the desert, and we get the information about this event from ancient texts that allude to what happened. There are also references to people with white or auburn hair in some Chinese myths. And let's remember, I did post a video concerning Genghis Khan saying that he had red hair and blue eyes. So, white or auburn hair in some Chinese myths. And since we are talking about myths, the myth always hides nuggets of very old truth. The references to such people concern the most ancient times of Chinese history, and therefore coincide in time with the realization of the Dionysian campaign. The evidence that this campaign took place is given to us today by the findings that are constantly coming to light from the excavations carried out in the area. These excavations efforts have revealed the ruins of entire cities, which are built according to ancient Greek plans. There are foundations of buildings with ancient Greek construction. I'm going to try and find the Chinese ancient Greek theater, which is in tremendously good condition. Yes, an ancient Greek theater in China. Let me find it for you, just a minute. Okay, so here it is. You can see the theater in the bottom left-hand side in excellent condition. This is in Yunnan province. Yunnan means, of course, this is what the Turks call Greeks today, Yovan, Yunnan. Okay? Meaning Ionia. Okay? Yunnan province was full of Greeks there. And they had this ancient Greek theater there. So obviously, we know that the Greeks did have a very intense connection with the Chinese. The Chinese even have the Greek key, that meander, that looks like a half square, then in bottom half square, and that means peace, and bold, victory honors the bold. Okay, so that's the ancient Greek theater there. Now, there are foundations of buildings with ancient Greek construction, with an internal courtyard and special spaces for the central hearth of the house. But the most important findings were not the buildings, but the mummies found in the dozens of tombs in the area. There were many thousand-year-old mummies perfectly preserved by the dryness of the desert, and the most paradoxical thing, the mummies did not look Chinese. The mummified bodies belonged to tall, red-haired and light-eyed men. Apparently the dead were not Chinese. The oldest dates back to the 19th and 18th century BC, and the most recent around 4th century BC, that's around the time of Alexander the Great. Among the bodies were a baby which had blue stones in place of its eyes, and some women who wore pointed hats like the Amazons. Who were these people, and how did they live in such an arid region? You answer the second question based on geological observations, which explain the possibility that the desert was once a fertile valley due to the altitude difference from sea level. But what about the people? The results of the DNA research proved that the mummies did not belong to the Chinese or any other people of the region, such as the Uyghur Turks. They showed that they came from people of ancient Scythia or the Eastern Mediterranean. That is Greece, right? Ionia. Ionia is where, well, Ionia was Greeks lived throughout Turkey at that time. But here there is another element that demonstrates the Greekness of the findings, thus excluding Scythians and other people of the Eastern Mediterranean, and therefore the passage of Alexander the Great from there. Archaeologists report that designs of the clothes of the dead have ancient Greek motifs. One particularly inscribed symbol on the tomb is the ancient Greek symbol of the swastika. It is true that the Greeks passed through that area, and if so, what were they looking for in such a desert? I've already mentioned that possible reason from another video that I recently posted concerning Alexander the Great, that he went there in order to meet an Atlantean from Hyperborea that was supposed to bring him a special weapon, an advanced technology weapon, something like, for example, the lightning rod of Zeus, which he would be using for his campaigns. So that's why he had to go in there, and he lost a third of his warriors. The existence of cities with Greek architecture and more the discovery of the dead with Greek elements prove that the Greeks did not just pass through there, but made a permanent settlement. What is the reason for such an act in the area? If there is no specific purpose, a specific role to be played by those who would settle there? Could it be that these cities were fortresses and outposts, and the people were guardians of some secret? What was this secret that led the great soldier to undertake this leg of his campaign? These questions lead us back to the school of Mieza and Aristotle's teaching. Aristotle was Alexander the Great's teacher, as we know, to his famous student, Alexander the Great. And we wonder exactly what information he conveyed to Alexander about the old campaigns of the older Greeks and what Dionysus was looking for then. What did he tell him about the secrets of the desert that the deserts hid, and what instruction did he give him to get there? He must also have given him instructions on what to do when he got there, and this is easily explained by the existence of the prison cities there. It's certain that he told him about the campaign of Dionysus and suggested this route as the safest to approach the desert. The campaign of Dionysus can be proven despite those scholars who consider it a figment of imagination, from the existence of dead people with an age of almost 4,000 years among the mummies discovered in Takla Makan desert. Their age approaches that of the date mentioned in the ancient secretariat as the trial period of the campaign of Dionysus. Is that Alexander the Great attempted this part of his campaign to inspect the works left by Dionysus and reinforce them with his own where there was need. The most difficult point is to identify the reason for the creation of these works. What necessity led to cities being built in the middle of the desert and manned by skilled personnel ready to fight battles? It will be difficult to know exactly what these guards were protecting or what exactly they were preventing from escaping this area. It is reasonable to think that such a harsh area in which someone builds outposts and fortresses plays the role of a type of prison and has very special and dangerous prisoners in it. Well, perhaps they were the Nephilim. But what was the desert prison hiding inside? We may never know for sure, but Aristotle had certainly told Alexander the Great this, and it gave him the amazing drive he displayed during his campaign to get there. Well, we already know he was to meet the Atlantean Hyperboreans and receive a secret weapon of high technology. Now, it becomes clear, therefore, that the Takla Makan desert hides many and dangerous secrets. The evidence that comes to light reveals historical events that seem capable of overturning established positions on the history of the region and perhaps even world history. Campaigns and settlements of populations in times older than hitherto believed and which were made by people of high intellectual level, peoples who were not related in appearance to the natives and did not even in their morals and customs. And finally, the central point in all of this is that the Greeks and their actions led by Alexander the Great and Dionysus. This I've translated from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.